Killer 7 is amazing and is probably my favorite game. It's also the game that dragged me into this mess of critique and analysis. Through its complex, borderline insane story and stunning aesthetics, it instilled in me a strange, artistic obsession. For better or for worse, probably worse, it's led me down this rabbit hole where every game I play or movie I watch has some sort of review either in my head or online. Anyway, Suda51's brainchild Killer 7 stands as an avant-garde masterpiece that left me speechless by the time the credits rolled. It's been a decade since I first played the game, and coming back to it for the HD remaster has reminded me of the little details that have faded away from my memory over the years. Grasshopper Manufacture hasn't made a game like this ever since. It really is a lost art, like how Demon Souls is to Dark Souls. When you look at the silver case and Killer 7, they evoke this unique feeling that bleeds style and evokes danger. This isn't to say that No More Heroes is bland or anything like that, it's just more comical and quirky compared to its more serious predecessors. Since then, Suda hasn't even held the role of director besides that time he co-directed the Japanese exclusive Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. Sure, Killer is Dead is pretty neat, but it definitely doesn't capture Suda's creative essence like Killer 7 or even No More Heroes. As a longtime fan of Suda51, I really hope for Travis Strikes Again to be a true return to form, but I'm not holding my breath. I'll probably pick it up regardless just to support the chance of there being another No More Heroes helmed by the man himself. Anyway, there's just so much to say about Killer 7. Spoiler warning though, as I will talk about some of the game's story. Regardless, I feel that the game's story goes beyond what's on paper, and playing the game is the only true way of really understanding and experiencing what the game has to offer. Killer 7's a game that I highly recommend for video game enthusiasts as well as those looking for genuine artistry in a medium known for cookie cutter crud. If you're gonna play it, you should probably play it without spoilers. Keep in mind that it's a dark game, so it isn't really for those that want something relaxing or lighthearted. I wrote a review for it on DarkStation, so if you need convincing, I suggest you check it out. The link's in the description. In the review, I do my best to explain what makes it so great without throwing in any real spoilers. It's available on Steam for the low price of $20, and it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it, so I genuinely suggest you pick it up. The game redefined my view on the medium, and it's the most unique game I've ever played. If more people support it, Suda might actually have the bargaining power to put in the remaining 2/3 of his written material into a sort of Killer 7 Complete Edition. Anyway, let's dive into Killer 7. First off, that title screen is amazing. I love how the sharp red lines slowly bleed onto the screen and how the title seeps into existence. The sound descends with the red lines and rises with the appearance of the Killer 7 logo, complementing the simplistic title animation perfectly. The team at Grasshopper executed the intro so well that watching it amazes me every time. As we progress past the start menu, the menu options bleed and selecting an option triggers a trademark Heaven Smile laugh. Selecting New Game takes us to a difficulty settings screen that plays different music depending on what's highlighted. Choosing Deadly becomes a very tempting option just by virtue of how much cooler the music sounds compared to what plays when normal difficulty is highlighted. Seriously, whoever thought of this is, and always will be, a genius. Even before really starting the game, the stylistic flair already had me impressed. I don't know any other game that's been able to do so much with so little. Anyway, once the game actually starts, we're introduced to Garcian and Mills in glorious cel shading. The comic book aesthetic inspired by Mike Mignola's Hellboy fits the dark, unstable tone of the game. Killer 7 evokes a hodgepodge of different emotions. It borders the line between serious and absurd, all while giving off hints of insanity as the story progresses. When Suda developed Killer 7, he was given full creative reign by producer Shinji Mikami. This allowed Suda to freely create whatever he wanted during what I would consider the peak of his career. Mikami inspired Suda to create without any real restraint in the few auteur moments in the AAA video game industry. Nowadays, most auteur works come from the indie development scene, which is most likely why Travis Strikes Again has so many indie game references. Killer 7's gameplay is strange and arguably quite innovative. Some might say that the gameplay is just weird for the sake of being weird, but I'd have to counter that by saying that it makes things so much more straightforward. Essentially, it streamlines the survival horror formula and transforms it into an action-adventure experience. Movement has been simplified to the point where it's on rails, thereby eliminating the arguably archaic tank controls. Keep in mind, I love tank controls, but some people just seem to hate them for whatever reason. Enemies appear from almost anywhere, but the auto lock-on feature allows the player to track them with ease. Sure, all Heaven Smiles are invisible, but a quick scan will fix that with the push of a button. I also have to mention that the Heaven Smiles laugh when they're nearby to inform the player of the approaching threat. The game makes you feel like you're dealing with complex, layered systems, what with the aiming and the scanning and maybe even the countering, but in reality, it's just really simple and engaging gameplay. The limitations of the fixed camera system have been overtaken by well-executed sound cues and a first-person aiming system. Regardless, the fixed cameras are still there for the cool visual shots. While the general structure of a horror game is in place, it's been hijacked by this on-rails roller coaster of action and suspense. In a way, it provides the best of both worlds with stylish camera angles as well as tense first-person combat. Nothing really says exciting like going face to face with laughing kamikaze zombies. Even when talking about the Heaven Smiles, they're a complicated bunch. Their suicide bombing antics are reminiscent of the World War II kamikaze pilots that attacked Pearl Harbor. As a result, Heaven Smiles are inherently Japanese in their tactics. Coupled with Kunlun being able to create Heaven Smiles using his god hand and how he basically represents Eastern civilization, and you have a symbolic connection with Heaven Smiles and Japan. Suda weaves this geopolitical narrative into the core of the experience. There's an in-depth analysis community full of people trying to decipher what it all truly means, and I just love that about the game. It's an experience with so much to say, but it isn't going to spoon-feed you the point. This is also why I really like stuff like Serial Experiments Lane and Mulholland Drive. These are all artistic works that just leave so much open to interpretation while being immensely evocative and elaborate. All three of these works were eye-opening in their own unique ways, while being exactly what I look for in art. They also cover themes of identity in vastly different ways, so I might as well call it the alter ego triangle while I'm at it. If you see art the way I do, I highly recommend all of them. Sidetracking aside, killer7's story feels nonsensical, but it actually makes sense once you take the time to really think about what's going on. It's sort of like Memento in a way where the ending recontextualizes a lot of the weirdness behind the story. This game has a lot to take in on the first playthrough, so replays or at least notes are probably required, unless you happen to have a mind palace or something. There's a lot of vagueness in the story and it's a challenge to piece together. It's a game that requires outside reading after reaching the conclusion, which may be a turnoff for a lot of people. However, the story drew me in so much that I felt that it was worth the time and effort to piece together the ideas that Suda wove into the game. I mean, this isn't like Final Fantasy XIII with all the lore dumps and wacky vocabulary. It's actually interesting figuring out what it all means, or at least interpreting what it means. As a teen playing the game in good old 2008, it was especially mind-blowing. Games never really told stories on this scale until Killer7. If you have a genuine counter-argument, I'm all ears. I mean, after all, I haven't played everything. Sure, there are some examples of games with stories that rival Killer7's that came out before it, but I don't think they reach the level of depth or have the level of cohesiveness in presentation, gameplay, and story that Killer7 does. It's a work that's parts formed to create an even greater whole. The music is perfectly in tune with the game, as is the amazing voice acting that basically blew all other games out of the water at the time. Even now, I'd argue that the voice acting hasn't really aged and that it suits the game's manic world superbly. Honestly, Killer7 is a game I can talk about endlessly. I mean, even the diversity of the playable characters is worth noting. Video games obviously lack diversity, but here in a game released in 2005, we have a whole Burger King Kids Club of a playable cast. I don't think this is just some random detail, as the game has a lot of political commentary on the United States and Japan. The multicultural cast represents America's acceptance of immigrants and the inevitable assimilation as a result of Americanization. Of course, this is just my interpretation in a work that has no definitive answers. It's very much a case of the death of the offer. Suda intended for all playable characters to have an arc like how Dan had Encounter, but the time constraints forced the team to cut it short. Anyway, Killer7 is a game that's incredibly divisive, as seen by even the Metacritic scores up so far. That's a ridiculous score, but I understand and respect it, as the game is really for people with pretty particular tastes. It's not as commercial as the sellout mainstream stuff, and it's just really true to Suda's vision. Honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. The game is essentially a cult classic that I would consider required playing for anyone interested in what pushing the boundaries of the medium looks like. Anyway, Killer7 is a game that I can't recommend enough on the off chance that you might actually get into the game like I have. Even on a surface level, Killer 7 is a highly entertaining experience with superb presentation, a strange and exciting story, and innovative gameplay. By the way, like I mentioned earlier, I wrote a review of Killer 7 on DarkStation, so if you want to check that out, I have a link down in the description. It's easily more focused than whatever the hell you've just been listening to, and I tried my best to highlight what I love about the game. Writing about Killer 7 after all these years has left me wondering where the next big artsy game is. Nothing since Killer 7 has really surprised me on that level, and maybe that's a good thing. It's a real pseudo fever dream with a perfect conclusion. Thanks for watching this video on my deteriorating mental state. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. If you want more, here are some of my other videos. Anyway, I'll see you all next time when I have a mental breakdown on the roof of a hotel.